Roses are red, violets are blue. This is a poem that I made for you. My name is Blaiden, him Matt, and him Theo. Together, we're Stay Hot, your favorite podcast trio. Welcome
Bars.
back to Bars. Welcome back to another
Bars.
Stay Hot live stream. I'm Blaiden Kirkland, as always, with my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Spinauer and Theo Ash. How are you guys doing today, man? Watch the worst national championship game ever.
Watch about
This
half
shit-
of that one, can't lie.
This is hilarious. This has been killing me. You got some Ohio State wide receiver questions in the chat. I want to go ahead and address those. JSN should be the number one receiver off the board, and Garrett Wilson would go ahead of him if he was in this draft class, and he would be a top 10 pick. Garrett Wilson would also be the number one receiver in this class by like a pretty wide margin, to be completely honest with you.
Quentin Johnston is not him, I fear.
Nope. He
that
got
guy.
he cost himself some cash last night.
He is Kevin White reincarnate, I fear, as someone who hasn't watched him that closely, but has watched a decent amount of TCU games actually this year, probably more than any other individual football team, with the playoff games and the game against Texas and a few other scattered ones here and there. And he's just kind of weird off the line of scrimmage, and he's kind of a body catcher down the field. Like, I saw someone, a Bears fan, because I did my Bears planning video on my account, and talked about how JSN was my number one receiver. Reminds me of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Reminds me kind of shades of Keenan Allen in there. Like someone who, may not be a burner, but like a good football player, you can tell. Like, he knows how to create separation. He knows how to contort his body. He knows how to make guys miss. Like, he just knows what he's doing out there. And that's going to be enough for him, I think. Quentin Johnston. And then someone's like, well, Quentin Johnston is 6'4" and he runs a 4.3. Some Bears fan. Like, he's wide receiver one. It's like, you know how you employ on your team, dude? Chase Claypool, right? Like, that's like kind of more what I see Quentin Johnston is like, maybe he'll be a good.
Not a terrible point.
Right. It's someone who I think is a bit of a freak and, obviously very athletic. But is he someone who is like going to be this super nuanced dude? Because with a lot of wide receiver play, it's all a lot about timing, right? When you hit that third step, you're manipulating at the top of the route here, like faking right, but your plan is actually going left, and you're doing that at just the right time that the ball is there. Like, it's a lot of technical mental stuff,
Yes.
right? So you want the Ohio State guys, and that's why literally every single one of them has been good, because they get coached by the best in the world at it. And when they get to the NFL, they're freaks and they know what to do. And I think Quentin Johnston is kind of just a freak. So yeah, I love JSN to the Bears. I'm not to hijack everything, just because it would force Fields to get the ball out fast, right? Like, it would just.
It's exactly what they need. And people are going to be
Would that
low on
be
him,
like in the
partially
second
rightfully
round?
so. No,
I think you trade
he's not a
back.
second
Honestly,
rounder.
if you,
I think they trade back too.
But like, if you can, and when you look at I did a mock draft. I didn't post it yet.
Okay.
But like, man, once you get past the top three, I had like a couple teams trade up, right? First two off the board, you get Young and Stroud, and then obviously Anderson and Carter. Then after that, there's kind of a void. There's kind of a void, honestly, where it's like, who's the fifth pick in the draft? It's not a great place to be, honestly. Like, Miles Murphy's kind of nice. There's some shades of like Zadarius Smith there, where he's big and he gets out the ball pretty fast, but not super like, oh my god, like fifth overall pick type pass rusher to be like. There's or Jordan Addison or even JSN at 5 or any of the. I guess I haven't scouted the tackles, but it just doesn't quite seem like fifth overall or sixth overall. So if you can get someone to bite on that first overall pick, like I'm kind of for the Bears, like I think you want to trade kind of into JSN range. You either want to trade to like 4 with the Colts, so you get one of the big two defensive guys, or I think you might want to go with a team like Washington that might be picking in the middle of the first and try to get down a good ways, and then take a guy like JSN and get a ton of picks next year. I think that's
I've been a big fan recently of them trading back with Houston, right? And they would get basically that second overall pick, which would basically be no change for them, and then they would probably also get the Texans' second round pick, and they'd have back-to-back picks in the second round, or trading with Detroit and they get both of Detroit's first this year. That one I've been a little bit intrigued with, because then you could still probably get a pretty high-level defensive player and get a guy like JSN.
Yeah, I think so. I think that could be a decent one. I just think, like, I wonder if a trade with now we're just talking about the Bears. If we're talking about like picking at 9, right? If you're with the Panthers, I just wonder if that's the spot you want to be. But I guess you could trade back. You could always trade back
9,
twice.
yeah. I mean, I would like the Panthers to stay pat and pick whichever project falls to them, to be completely honest. I guess I haven't scouted enough, and I should have more of a strong opinion on Levis or Richardson or whatever. But to me, if it was Caleb Williams, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, and that was who you were trading up for, I would do that for the 3 first. I'm not doing it for Stroud and Young. They're not quite that level, and I like Levis and Richardson a pretty decent amount. If you feel like you can develop them, I'm happy staying there and taking them at 9.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's where you want to be if you're if you're kind of in that 5 to 10 range in the draft. I think that might be where you take those developmental quarterbacks. That I think that there's, like I said, like everyone hates Levis and everyone hates Richardson, and they haven't learned their lesson from like talented quarterbacks in the past that were projects. And I know that these guys aren't Josh Allen level talents, in my opinion. Like, they're not quite like that, because no one is quite like that.
But dude, like Richardson and Levis are still pretty darn talented.
They're pretty
man.
darn
It's like,
talented, right? They're the only two that are like, holy shit, with the physical gifts. I know so a lot of Ohio State fans think Stroud is, and a lot of Alabama fans think Young are like, oh my God, physical gifts. But I don't quite think that's true. But they are the most pro ready, and they have the most accuracy, and they definitely have high floors. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Let's see, Theo, let's talk about the Rodgers situation. I actually am very confident in the Rodgers situation. I know a lot of people, I should make a video about this. I know a lot of people made a big deal about him holding on to his jersey, right? Because this one's special. Cobb's retiring. Okay. Cobb is retiring, probably. Because in the press conference afterwards, he said, night game, Lambeau, week 18, it's just a special one that you may want to give to someone, is what he said. Someone else or someone special is what he said. He may want to give it to someone special. Cobb retiring, right? He's probably going to give this to Cobb, the jersey from Cobb's last game, longtime friend. That's what I think he meant by that. And again, I very much still believe in the idea that it's Rodgers for one more year. Contract gets way more movable after next year ends. Love's 5th-year option, 1 year prove it type of season. That's, to me, still what makes the most sense. With the development of Watson, I do think that you can convince Rodgers to come back for one more year. I mean, he just signed the contract. If he signed the contract and was just going to quit immediately after one bad year, like, he wouldn't have signed a contract that long. Like, I think he'll look back on it and he'll say, I made this deal. I signed this deal. It's a long-term deal. I'm not just going to bail on it after 1 year, especially in a year where we were so close, like 4 points away from the playoff. I don't think that he's going to retire. I don't know.
I don't see, if you're Rodgers and you were like, I might retire next year, would you then be like, I only want a 1 year deal? Or would you be like, I want a long-term deal with a bunch of whole bunch of money after that? Like, I kind of think it doesn't matter to him from his perspective. He's like, I can retire anyway if I get this long-term deal. So this is perfect.
The long-term deal gives him options. That's probably.
Maybe he's a man. Have you ever heard of being a man of your word, Matthew Sponauer?
Right. No, I have not.
You
Matt's a pathological liar.
So true. We do have to talk about the college football playoffs.
We do. Let's.
And
thoughts on the 12-team expansion?
It was always the BCS.
I have never felt better about it. What you watched last night was the entire argument for the 12-team playoff do a 180 in one day. It was hilarious. It went from, we need to have the 12-team playoff because that'll that'll give us more upsets. We need more upsets, and we'll see more underdog teams have a chance at winning the national title too. If we have the 12-team playoff, underdogs like this won't make it this far, and we'll avoid games like this. What happened? I thought 12-team playoff was pro upset, and all of a sudden now it's anti upset. And it's funny because in the first round, when the games were really good, people are like, see, these games are awesome. How could you not want more 12-team playoffs? How could you not want that? That's more playoff games like this. And then it's bad, and people are like, how could you not want the 12-team playoffs? We have games like this. The 12-team will fix it. Ultimately, whatever happens in the playoffs, people are going to sit there and say, oh, well, or whatever happens in the 4-team playoff, people are going to sit there and say, well, the 12-team playoff would fix this. And they don't really know specifically what they mean. So, like, for the last 3 or 4 years, you've heard the crying of, oh, it's the same teams, it's the same teams, it's the same teams. And then all of a sudden, back-to-back years, it's not really the same teams anymore. And this is just the worst thing to ever happen. It's only right if it's Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, and Georgia. Those have to be the teams. So I don't even necessarily.
Yeah, I want everyone who, or you could finish your rant, but just like everyone who said anything, anyone who uttered the word Alabama last night should be rounded up in a big pen and shipped to Tanzania, because that's a shitty take and idea. And the whole, like, this wouldn't have happened to Alabama, like, probably not, but like, why the fuck would they be there?
They lost 2 games, and like, people
don't lose
forget
2 games.
The 14 playoff was made. It was made so that like no team that had a claim to being the best in the country after the regular season and conference championship games were played would get left out. And you've gone to 4, and now there's teams crying that they're actually the 4th best team and that they deserve to be in anyway. And when you go to 12, people have this idea, oh, the 13th team will be like, well, we controlled our own destiny and we just didn't get it done in the regular season. No, it's not going to happen. There's going to be some 2-loss team that's like, but we had 1 ranked win. Dude, Alabama stunk this year. Sorry, man. They weren't the national champion, and they didn't win the national championship. Beautiful. Perfect. Sorry.
They had awful receivers. Their offensive line wasn't really that great. It was just Bryce Young, Will Anderson, and I can't remember their running back's name, but he was pretty good. Gibbs, yeah. Those were like the only good players this year.
Gibbs is nice. Kirby Smart is an underrated shit talker, is what I got from the national championship. Oh my God. After the game, well, first of all, he went for it on that 4th down. Oh my God. They were up 45, I think. That's insane behavior. I don't think a team has ever been as like, they kind of deserved it because getting beat 65-7 in a national championship game is crazy. But like TCU, oh my God, the amount of disrespect. Imagine playing in a national championship. You get there, you win almost all of your games except for 1, which you probably should have won if the refs could see a goal line. You win all your games, you get to the national championship game, and you got like major sports outlets tweeting that Georgia's the champion at halftime.
Yeah, I mean,
you got Georgia players, literally, they went to the stands and got wings and were just like eating wings on the sideline while the game was still going on.
Dude, I bet like all the money I have in my FanDuel account on Georgia. I
put $10 on TCU.
I mean, it's just, I mean, it would be like the worst champion in the history of college football by like a wide margin from a recruiting standpoint. And I said the same thing when they played Michigan, and granted, they kind of only beat Michigan because of like multiple pick sixes, which, that's things that they forced. But the talent difference between Michigan and Georgia is one that Michigan can't overcome. So, considering TCU's recruiting even worse, it's like,
right.
It kills me how the arguments will change. It's just whatever happens in the 14 playoff, whatever people have a problem with, that's what the 12-team playoff will fix. And if it changes year to year, and that means that you're contradicting yourself year to year, people will do it anyway. We're going to get to the 12-team playoff, and either the playoffs themselves will be good and people will say, great, see, we won. And, they're not going to care about the regular season all that much, which is fine. Whatever. I've accepted that. Or those 12-team playoffs will not end up the way that people want. And they're not going to be like, maybe we shouldn't have expanded the playoffs. They're just going to be like, college football sucks. It just sucks. I hate it. They're like, this doesn't work like the NFL. And it's like an entirely different system. And people will be like, but why isn't it like exactly like the NFL?
Right.
So
Right.
it's
And
just
it's not going to work is the thing. Like there's going to be 50-0 games. It's just the way shit goes, right? When you play high seed playing low seed instead of like 11 versus 10, right? What a bowl game would be, right? It would be like ideally like 10 versus, not exactly, that's not exactly how it works, but you try to like match up teams that are even. But like this is like you are literally setting up for this the rest of the way, right? This is what you are setting up. We all know that there's a big talent discrepancy in college football, and that's you either know how to accept that or you don't, right? Like people who really like college football, they know this. They just like the sport enough to watch the games that are good every week.
Can't wait to see Georgia beat Utah by 100.
So there's going to be some good games, and when those games happen, this is the thing that like after the 14 playoff games, the semifinals, like those games were good, and then like I saw all the college football writers, the NFL will never give you games like that, and this is why college football is clear. And that might be true, but they also spend.
I'm sorry, it is. It's like the best college football games are so much better, and the only two get like every year the NFL has one game like that, and people are like, "Oh my god!" You know, they'll be like, "It's all," and there's no defense in college football, but then they like Chiefs Bills somehow.
They might, and that might be true, but those same college football writers spend the other 360 days of the year writing about how fundamentally broken their sport is and how like everything is off kilter. And
didn't used to be like this, man.
It didn't used to be like this, but now it is. So I don't know.
I see your point. I do, and you know, it's funny. You think about USC Tulane. That was a great game. The solution is that game should have felt like an accomplishment for Tulane in its own right, and it still does. But the more you expand the playoffs, the less it will. But when Tulane won that game, what were people saying? Well, this sucks that they're not advancing in the playoffs. Guys, if Tulane advances in the playoffs, how do you think it's going to end? What do you think is going to happen? They're not going to win the national title. And now people have accepted that. But we went from Tulane needs to be advancing in the national title. It must, or to, you know, in the playoffs, it must be that way too. How can we let these underdog teams that are recruiting poorly get so far? In the span of a week. In a week, people have flipped the entire argument on its head, and it kills me.
All I'm saying
it's so
is
funny.
Roll wave.
roll wave.
People can't conceptualize this like idea of winning something that isn't the entire thing. Yep. You see it in basketball too, where it's like they're like, oh, maybe we do an early season tournament. Like it's just a tournament. And like I played soccer when I was a kid, and we would go to different like obviously you could win like state, you could do that. But sometimes there would just be some random ass tournament that we would go play in and see if we could win it. And if we did, it was cool, and we won this tournament. Yeah. And if we didn't, we didn't win the tournament, and the season continued on. And it made a lot of sense to me that it's like this is just another thing to go win.
Every other sport has no problem figuring that out.
Wrestling not every other sport, just soccer. Soccer understands this. Well, maybe
soccer understands it. Wrestling understands it. Track understands it.
Americans don't understand it.
It's like just football and basketball. Those are the only ones.
Well, and not even basketball actually.
Golf gets it.
Because they've got the Olympics, right? You go over to the Olympics and you win the gold medal, and that's like a little extra
NCAA
thing you
tournament.
can do.
A Final Four appearance is considered very good. The solution to parity in college football is not like you're going to make some magical system that like balances recruiting. Recruiting is unbalanced because being a good team is the advantage in getting good players, and the NFL being a bad team is the advantage in getting good players. So unless you want to make there a prospect draft, which obviously is ridiculous, that's not going to change it.
A 15 round, the 3 stars.
With the first pick.
Incarnate Word is now on the clock. It's been going for
with the first pick
4 months.
The solution is not to have like. The solution is not to have like, some magical system that balances all that. The solution is that building up a program and getting to the point where you are a team that has the talent, that's like the process. That takes time. That's what you watch, you know? But you need to have things that are rewarding the teams that aren't necessarily at that level yet. And that's the point of the bowl games. That's why it was like that for 100 years. It's not because everyone who ran college football was stupid or evil. It's because that's how it logically should have worked. But when you take that away, when you say the bowl games matter, nothing matters but winning the national title, how are teams supposed to achieve anything that aren't at that level yet? And why, as a recruit, would you go there?
Right.
It's
Right. Because
it's
that
simple.
shows you. Yes. And I guess you could still say that where it's like well, last year we had this record, this year we got to the 1st round of the playoffs, next year we got to the second round and we lost. But I don't know, and this is kind of I may be from an aesthetic standpoint and just whatnot, but it is just better to end it on a high note and say, like, look at this trophy
Absolutely.
we have, and it's not the loot, because now it's a consolation prize, right? Like, we lost, but look at our Peach Bowl trophy that we got. We lost, the next week, but we got the Peach Bowl trophy, and it just feels like a, doesn't feel as
or
important.
people will say that making the playoffs will help their recruiting, and to some extent that's true. Not nearly. I mean, people are like, it's going to balance recruiting. Dude, you can transfer instantly and teams can pay players money. Dog, Tulane making the 12-team playoffs will not balance their recruiting. However, when we're talking about the advantage of being a good team and what that does for the recruiting, like, look at Cincinnati. What do you think about Cincinnati's playoff season helped their recruiting? Do you think it was going undefeated, winning the AAC and being ranked number 4? Or do you think it was the playoff game that they played? It was going undefeated and being ranked number 4. If they had gone and played in the Sugar Bowl or the Cotton Bowl or whichever New Year's Six Bowl instead of the playoffs in a BCS system, would their recruiting not have benefited just as much? It would have, easily. So I don't know. Last night was hilarious.
It was.
Or TCU, talking about the actual football, their funky little, like, odd front that they do where just the 3 down linemen, stupid. All right.
It's God bless them. That's what I'll say. Jesus, man. I mean, it's just not fair. And that's what it comes down to. Is I think a lot of these teams, like, I think about Cincinnati, Alabama last year, outside of the trenches, Cincinnati actually matched up pretty good with Alabama. They actually held their own. But the offensive and defensive line and these, like, little, it's like doing that type of stuff against a team that's just like twice your size, it just doesn't work. And it's so hard to have any scheme, especially what TCU was doing last night.
Yeah, like, there's really no people on the outside. So it's just like, well, why don't we just run to the outside? And you're only rushing, I mean, they do a lot of blitzes and stuff, so they're not only rushing 3, but you only got 3 beefy dudes in there, and Georgia will be like, you are matching the beefiest, toughest, gnarliest team in history with, like, 3 down linemen. Okay. And that was just not and you can't really deviate from it if you're TCU, because it's what you are, it's what you do. It's not like you can it's not Madden where all of a sudden you can just change your playbook like the week before the Super Bowl and then, like, look at all the sliders of the team fit match and then it's just there. It's not like that. So you got to stick with what your guys know, but it just was never. I said Georgia by 20 before the game, and I was off by more than if I would have said what? I could have said TCU by double digits and been just as far off as what actually happened, and I predicted Georgia to win by 3 scores. It was
I think I had Georgia by 25.
Yeah, way off. We were way off.
And I was, and you know what?
Not even close, man.
I was being nice too. I shouldn't have been. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Hilarious though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good name for the neck roll linebacker. No, sir. You can't be starting a neck roll linebacker against an SEC team. I'm sorry.
You cannot.
You can't be doing that.
If we want to speak on the draft a little bit again, I was seeing a lot of people say that they think the Lions are not in a position to draft a quarterback this year.
Dude, like, come on, guys. Come on, guys.
Like when?
Let's
I mean,
say
when-
when
guess
it's going
I
to be
get it
Goff
if
to
they-
the Super Bowl. We've already done this with him. He's as far as quarterbacks who you need to replace, he's pretty good. I'll give you that. But like, guys, same thing with Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the passing offense was really good this year, but like eventually your offensive coordinator is going to leave, right? Ben Johnson's going to be gone.
Yeah.
Do you have faith in Goff after that happens, right? Like Ben Johnson's going to be gone. You know, they're eventually going to sign Penei Sewell to an $100 million contract, and they're going to lose Taylor Decker, and eventually these things are going to happen. And like with Rodgers, right? With Aaron Rodgers, his guys get signed away all the time, right? Like there goes Nathaniel Hackett. Well, I guess he didn't play that well after Nathaniel Hackett left, but like there goes Ben McAdoo, there goes Luke Getsy, there goes to the good quarterbacks. It happens all the time. Josh Allen, there goes Brian Dable, there he goes. Goodbye. Does it matter? No. There goes Matt Nagy, Patrick Mahomes. Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. There goes this and that. Like it doesn't matter what they lose. There goes Tyreek Hill. Does it matter? No.
Right.
It doesn't matter. They continue to maintain stuff, and it's like you got to keep that in mind with Jared Goff. Is like right now things are pretty damn good. No one's been hired away. All the good players are on cheap deals right now. Like I haven't lost anyone. It's building up. It's in that stage, but like eventually that's not going to be the case. And like, do you have a guy in that case that it doesn't matter? No, you have a guy where it very much does matter. So, but
if he couldn't win a Super Bowl with Sean McVay, he's not winning one.
Oh,
probably not.
We got people
not.
in the comments, guys. Daniel Jones isn't going to win you a Super Bowl.
Yeah, bro.
Yep.
Like...
Sorry, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you guys. If he does not look like he is turning into a franchise quarterback by the end of year 2, he's almost certainly not doing it. And I'm sorry, guys. He was not particularly impressive. These are guys with like once you start getting up to that level of like we are supposed to win playoff games, you're going to judge your quarterbacks a lot more harshly, and you're not going to look on. He didn't mess up. He didn't throw a ton of interceptions. We made things as easy as possible on him, and he didn't lose us the game instantly. You're not going to look at that as like, oh my God, this is amazing. And look, I don't think that I expect Daniel Jones and Goff to be starting week 1. I don't think that's the wrong decision for next year. But to be like, we're set at quarterback, I don't think people say that because they, in their heart of heart, they believe it. I think they say that because they stare down how hard it is to get a quarterback, to actually get a franchise quarterback, and how risky it would be to take somebody with the tools unless you have the number 1 overall pick. And you say, I would rather just roll with this guy. It's easier to just be like, this guy could be the one.
All I'm saying is you have Goff on, like, people are acting like Goff's just gone. Like, Goff is on contract for what, 2 more years? Draft a guy. You're not going to have, like, the Lions aren't getting any worse. You're not going to have the 6th pick next year. The fact that the Rams were as bad as they were is a blessing. Like, that is a complete blessing. You're not going to have this opportunity next year or 2 years from now. Caleb Williams isn't going to be available to you. If you like Will Levis, if you like Anthony Richardson, if Stroud fall, like, if there's a guy that you like and he falls to you at 6, pull the trigger on him.
Do you feel the same way? Just a hypothetical question. I agree with you.
Yes.
Or trade up. Do you feel the same way about the Seahawks at 5?
I kind of do. Kind of do. Like, first of all, Geno's a free agent this year. It's a little bit different because Geno may ask for a little bit more money.
I think you bring back Geno.
I think you should try. I think you should try. But if he has a good offer to play somewhere else, he might take it. That might be the only thing, unless you tag him, I guess.
I feel a little bit differently about the Seahawks because I actually think Geno is better than Goff. I do.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Geno is better than Goff, but like,
is Geno one of those guys? Right,
he's 32.
Right,
depends a lot on how much you're paying him. As far as team building goes, it kind of depends a lot on how much you're paying him, and that's part of the Lions' problem is like $34 million for average quarterback play, where we have to say, well, he can be okay if everything around him is really, really, really nice. It's like
franchise Geno trade for.
It's like, man, I don't know.
Yeah, It's an interesting question about, what directions, because the Lions and Seahawks hypothetically are they had the same record. It came down to some tiebreakers that one's in the playoffs and one's
Right.
aren't. One has like kind of a journeyman bridge quarterback. The other has Geno, who kind of fits that description. They pick very close to each other in the draft. Why should their plans be different, I guess is the question I got to grapple with. And I think maybe the question is, the answer might be the Lions. This the Lions are truly like there. They're not quite playing with house money like the Seahawks are after trading away their franchise guy. They did because they traded away Stafford. So I guess they are just in the same place. So maybe my logic should be consistent. It's kind of tough. Just I do feel Geno is a bit better. I do feel a little bit better about Geno than Goff, and I feel that way because I think that he's got a little bit more confidence to him than Goff does. I feel like he's a bit more accurate. He's got, I think, a bit more escape abilities. I mean, he really showed some serious speed in that at the end of that Rams game for like that one play where then Ramsey knocked him out of bounds and there was that penalty. So I think he's a little bit more mobile. I do think he's a bit more accurate, and so that's kind of where I'm at with Geno versus Goff. But yeah, I do wonder what the Seahawks will do because they're in that number 5 spot, and in that number 5 spot, they're kind of in that dead man zone where they're probably not going to be able to get Carter or Anderson. Maybe something happens, Carter falls, and they can get Carter, problem solved. But if they can't get Carter or Anderson and they're there at number 5, who's there, right? Like one of the corners, maybe you could take a guy like, what's the South Carolina corner, or there's a really good corner class, but I mean, maybe you could take Miles Murphy or something like that, Tyree out of Texas Tech, I think that is. Like maybe you could do something like that, but they're kind of in that dead zone, and they're probably not going to be gifted this top 5 pick again. Same with the Lions. I guess I'd rather drop a franchise quarterback in that Lions offense. And I think with the Seahawks, you can roll with Geno again because,
and you can have Goff start week 1, right? Like this is ultimately Goff has done his job well, right? He's played the part, and he's gonna play the part of bridge quarterback well also. But you're not gonna have another opportunity to put someone in there to sit for a year or long. Like if you need him to sit longer, you can because you have him on I'm pretty sure you have Goff on contract for 2 more years. So you can let him sit for kind of as long as you need.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, and it depends on how much you like Levis and Richardson, but
that's true.
I don't know. I'd consider it. I would definitely consider it for both teams. And maybe they would, you talk around the league, there's still a long time to go. Maybe because they have 2 draft picks.
Yeah.
Maybe people are lower on Levis and Richardson than we think, and you could get them more in that 20 range, like Jordan Love, who was kind of a toolsy guy who didn't really have the numbers to back up.
But also, there are a lot of teams after 5 and 6 that need quarterbacks. If you like Levis,
it's a pretty
5 or 6, you should probably take him there.
And what it comes down to is teams are pretty risk adverse when it comes to these situations. So if you can talk yourself into you don't need to take that shot and be risky with that, they don't like to do it. And that's the wrong strategy. It's incorrect. So I think the Seahawks taking a quarterback is pretty darn unlikely, and I'm not sure I would even agree if they did. I think the Lions, I think that's a toss-up. I really wonder if they will, because it's so much easier to just be like, we could get 2 really good defensive players, though, and we could just roll with Goff and pay him a big bunch of money, and, that'll maybe down the line that'll be a problem, but it's not going to be a problem this year. So, but then you have a team like the Panthers where it's like they must go be serious about quarterback this offseason. No, they have to be, or it's like we just don't even care.
It'll be interesting to see because the middle-level quarterback contract is kind of dead, right? You don't really see guys get like reasonable, cheap contracts anymore because I think if you could tell me, because we have seen Jimmy Garoppolo in the Super Bowl, we've seen Goff in the Super Bowl, we've seen who's the worst quarterback to win it recently? Would you say Foles?
Probably
I
Foles.
guess.
Yeah,
Foles. You see Foles win a Super Bowl, so if someone's on like if you could take these guys on like a real cheap, like if you could get Goff really cheap, like eventually maybe I'd consider that. But you gotta like look at the market right now, and it's like, where are all these cheap, like that's not really what happens, but maybe there's a bit of a
We'll see
maybe
how it plays. I
we'll
mean, a
see
lot
how
of it
it
is how
plays
much it
out.
costs to sign guys to sign. But yeah, you could get away with like the 16th best quarterback if you didn't have to pay him $35 million a year. But you
Yeah.
do, and the team building disadvantage. I mean, it's a brutal disadvantage to have the 5th best quarterback on a massive deal. Having the 16th is tough in itself. So
Yeah.
Speaking of having the 16th best quarterback on a massive deal, Kyler and the Cardinals, you have a new coach.
I thought you were about to say Watson.
No, Kyler's better than that. I like Kyler. I'm just making a low effort,
Yeah,
cheap
low hanging fruit
click,
there. It's okay.
clickbait joke for likes. Kingsbury fired.
yes,
Steve Keim probably he's on leave, but it seems like he's not coming back. And DeAndre Hopkins, the trade rumors are back. Interesting
baby.
situation. That kind of seems a little bit silly to be, a team that is courting Sean Payton potentially, and then like openly announcing DeAndre Hopkins not going to be. Do not think that he will be around. Any GM, you have to trade him. We don't want to give him a new deal. That is kind of an interesting way to approach it. A guy I took an Uber with, the owner of the Cardinals is named Stephen Bidwell. I took an Uber in Phoenix, and I was talking to him about football, and he said that he worked on the stadium at a point, and Stephen Bidwell was a dick to him and scammed him. So in solidarity with that Uber driver, solidarity that the Cardinals organization doesn't really know what they're doing. I don't know about this one, man. I guess like this is what happens when you trade for Hollywood Brown, give a first round pick for a guy on an expiring contract. You probably kind of have to give him a new deal. Otherwise, you just traded a first round pick for like a year or two of a guy. And it's kind of tough to give both Hollywood and DeAndre Hopkins massive new extensions. So one of them's got to go. It's the guy that you didn't just trade a first round pick for last year. I think that it's, once again, I think D-Hop showed that he could continue to play at a high level this year. We'll see what kind of contract they get. His game, we'll see how it ages because he's maybe not the most like nuanced. It's kind of, dominance at the catch point and all that. So we'll see how his game ages. Maybe you can get out of it before the contract a little bit. So maybe I can see it, but I don't know. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on the whole situation in Arizona. I'm just kind of spitballing.
I don't know. Those last couple of games, he was kind of just how many? What was his like target to catch?
I don't know, but he's playing with Trace McSorley and
I guess
David
that's
Blau.
true. I guess that's true. But it was like, man, they were. I wonder. It's like I do wonder about Hopkins. You're going to give up picks. You're going to pay him a bunch of money, and he's getting older, and that's the way that we're going to build around Justin Fields, which is a big suggestion. I'm not 100% certain. And I guess I get it because you kind of need to do it this year. And like, I don't love this receiver class, but I don't know.
I mean,
it totally depends on price.
He's going to get a less. I think he's going to get. The thing about the Bears is they just gave away the number 32 pick. I would be like, yeah, sure. But they already gave that away for discount DeAndre Hopkins, Chase Claypool. Like that deal.
Oh yeah, I forgot they don't.
Yeah, right. They don't have that pick that would be in Hopkins' range because obviously you're not going to trade the number 1 overall pick for Hopkins or anything like that. Why? Like, there's no.
Unless you're stupid.
Well, maybe I guess they could like trade back to 3 or whatever Arizona has, and like you move from 1 to 3 and you get Hopkins, I guess. But that deal doesn't make any sense because why would Arizona be interested in moving to number 1? So yeah, we'll see. I will agree. It would be, you got to be careful with this one because of his age, and like giving up picks and a big deal is one that could potentially look bad, even though I still think he's a good player. But Yeah, I don't know. I don't hate the idea of trading him. I do think you kind of backed yourself into this corner where you know, kind of can't pay him because of the whole Hollywood Brown situation, which was bad. So this is kind of the price you pay. Um, but given their like in a vacuum, given their current situation, I don't think it's like a terrible idea to trade him. Well, they're kind of in this mini rebuild, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like the owner, Bidwell, probably shouldn't make that decision for the new GM, is kind of where I'm at with it. Where it's like, if the GM thinks it's a good idea, let the GM choose. Don't hire a GM with this on his back where it's like, oh, by the way, I'm already giving you, you know, you can't keep this good player. It's like, well, hire a staff and let the staff decide what to do is probably the best idea, and not have Bidwell decide what to do. So
I don't. What was the trade package for Brown again? Was it just the first?
I think it was just the first. Remember last year, Amari Cooper and a contract, like with a big contract,
man. I'm kind of thinking that we're seeing more like third round pick range, possibly. That's what I'm off the top of my head. This is going to be the ultimate. Yeah, I mean, you can envision it now. DeAndre Hopkins gets traded for less draft capital than people expect, less than you would do in Madden, because you also have to pay him, and that's another asset you have to give up for him, and people go crazy about it on Twitter and call the Cardinals idiots.
Yeah,
which maybe that's
and it's gonna be, oh, Hopkins got traded for peanuts twice,
and then some team with like negative $40,000 or $40 trillion in cap space is gonna be like, why didn't we make this move? And they won't understand that like every team chose not to beat this deal for a reason.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that, but I do think, much like the Amari Cooper deal, where it's like, well, the guy comes with like the fourth biggest cap hit, but a fifth round pick is like, the Browns still got pretty decent value out of the, like, Amari Cooper was a good wide receiver for them this year. Did he play up to that, maybe quite that contract? It's kind of up to debate, because it's not just the fifth round pick, right? If he got paid by the team all this money, and they were paying him all the money, right? And then he had that type of season, everyone would be like, whatever. But
he really started balling out towards the end.
I actually do think that worked out.
I do too. And I think whoever trades for Hopkins, like, we're kind of looking at it from both sides right now, where it's like, I get why he's not going to go for that much, but also I think at least for like next year, whoever gets him is going to be pretty happy, because I still think like he showed he could be a very good wide receiver this year. But he is like a 6 foot tall guy who relies a lot on contested catches. Not that he's like a horrible route runner or anything. I think some people stereotype him as just like, you know, one of these just a jump ball guy. Like, he's got a bit of a burst to him, but I don't know if his game is going to age like
Hopkins.
I would watch the guaranteed money. That's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, Hopkins has some pretty underrated burst, I think. But remember, the Cardinals the Cardinals didn't give up a lot, and partly that was the Texans being dumb.
Yeah, it was the Texans being dumb.
But like, they didn't give up a ton to get Hopkins in the first place. It was David Johnson, a second, and a fourth like the following year.
Yeah, and it's kind of tough to say like, oh, this team should be all over this. This team should be all over this when it comes to Hopkins, because I think like every team could kind of use a wide receiver like him. I mean, it could be a team with Super Bowl hopes, like, that could use a better number 2, like Dallas or the Bills. It could be a team like the Giants, who obviously really need a wide receiver. And I would honestly get it if it was a team like, I don't know, who do we want to say? Like the Lions, right? Like, if you're going to be drafting a rookie wide quarterback or making your support, it could be ship them back to the Texans and have, because they want, you know, Brandon Cooks pretty clearly wants out of there. So when they draft their rookie quarterback, like, let's get them some weapon. Like, truly every single team in the league probably works for DeAndre Hopkins and could use a guy like that, because everyone needs 3 receivers. The only team that I would say like no was probably like Cincinnati, because like, why they need to pay all these guys pretty soon here.
They'd have like 4.
Right. There's really not that many teams that it makes. I could see him getting traded quite literally anywhere, except for maybe like, I don't know if I would see the Raiders trading for another wide receiver 2 offseasons.
Yeah, the Raiders would
that's
be
too.
But in a vacuum, they could totally use him.
They might.
Sure.
Yeah, they could-
Devontae, Renfro, D-Hop, Mac Hollins,
it would surprise
Aaron
me.
Waller.
It wouldn't be stupid, but it wouldn't surprise me. It would surprise me. Jaguars would surprise me because they just traded for Ridley, so they probably are
Yeah.
like, let's. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe the Eagles or one of these teams. That
Bro,
just traded, but
the Eagles. They're just like, actually, we don't have enough weapons.
how Roseman? This is it exactly. Roseman is a very active trader, though, and
Yeah.
whenever anything comes up like this, he's all over it. So no team. Cincy's the only team that I'm like, Cincy, do not do that. That would be silly.
You would lose the we talked
maybe
about
the
like
Saints
you want
because
you
of
want
their
to
cap situation. Saints and the Bucks, they're
Saints.
probably not in. Definitely the Bucks. No.
Wait for the restructure into oblivion play by the Saints for the 20th year in a row.
The Saints 0-17 take will hit eventually. I'm sure of it.
Tyler, I don't think they can afford to pay T. Higgins. It would be interesting to see, once all these contracts start to hit the fan, if they say we would rather have a first round pick and cheap talent than T. Higgins because we've got Chase. But Boyd is
T. Higgins
kinda
is
tough.
nice though.
He's
T-
extremely nice. He's extremely
He's
nice.
so nice with it.
That's
I
one that I
think-
think you could squeeze in. I think there probably will be a way to squeeze that in. It's not like I don't quite know their cap situation, but I think there's teams know how to work magic with the cap. It's very real. It will come back to bite you. People don't understand that in the moment, but then when it actually happens, people just blame everything but the roster construction. Saints oh, cap isn't real. Like nothing ever happens if you just restructure all the time, and then a year like this happens, and everyone's like,
Nothing
whoa,
bad
it's
ever
it's
happens
the
to
coach's fault. It's the
Kennedys."
coach's. And they forget all about like the cap space. Like this was always building.
Right.
But I do think that Cincinnati is probably if they really wanted to, could get everybody under the books, and I would bet they really want to, because it's not like they've been restructuring for years and the time to pay the prices has come. I think that they could. I think they could get something done, but who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah,
But
I don't disagree.
Josh Allen going for 10 bands.
yeah, we'll see. I'm looking a bit into the coaching candidates. I'm watching which is basically watching interviews with them. And
Yeah,
it's kind of tough. I really like Ben Johnson from the Lions. He's pretty young, but if you watch him, like I learned something just watching his press conferences. Like the guy's pretty charismatic and like he's pretty good with like some guys just give kind of canned answers, but like he actually gives some like pretty insightful X's and O's stuff. I watched one on Mike Kafka and I thought his answers were just kind of canned, like, oh, we're going to fit the scheme to the players and we'll see what we have. But I only watched one interview, so who knows? Not
But
that that's
also,
good or bad. It's
I
also
feel like
not
a
even
lot of
bad thing
coaches
if
are
you give canned
trying.
answers.
They're trying like not to give anything away, and
No, I just think it's good to kind of get an insight into their kind of personality and like how they communicate. I think like it's tough to draw a negative.
Do you think coach like coordinators that have never had a head coaching job, whenever they get interviews, they like I feel like didn't we talk about this with who were we talking with Chris Long about how like if you're a coach, you're trying to like put yourself out there, and they like know people that are like, oh, like we're gonna ask you something or we're gonna do this. We need you to like show us something. We're gonna like pitch you to like owners because they have to like get their name out because the owners don't know these guys.
Chris
Right,
Long
so,
was
like-
talking about how owners will hire names they've heard before.
Right.
And
So
however
like
they do that. Like Ben Johnson may not. First of all, his name is Ben Johnson. Boring, forgettable ass name.
Ben Johnson.
Forgettable name, right? Campbell gets all the shine on that team. Like, is he just a hot enough name, right, for an owner to sign off on it, right? Because
So when
we talked about with Long, they're not. Or no, it's Seth. It was Seth we were talking.
Was it
about
Seth?
It was Seth we were talking about this with, because we were talking about like owner is on their jet.
I couldn't remember if it was Seth or
Yeah, owner is on their jet to their like diamond mines in Africa, like grinding the film, right? They're just
right.
reading ESPN. So, yeah, I genuinely think Kellen Moore is the worst coordinator in the NFL. He is so unbearably bad. I completely disagree with that. I honestly disagree with that so much. Like Kellen Moore, and it's from his own fans too. Like truly, the Cowboys offense, like with Dak Prescott, averages like 35 points a game, dude. Like it is not poorly run or poorly coordinated. Like I get it. Like I get it. I've charted Cowboys games and I get that he just goes shotgun run, shotgun run, shotgun run, shotgun run, shotgun run, shotgun run. And then it's under center run, under center run, and under center run, under center. And then the next drive, it's like under center pass, under center pass, under center pass. I get that, but like the plays are good. Like it works. I don't quite.
The biggest problem with the Cowboys is they just don't have the offensive line that they used to. I think that's really what it comes down to.
Right.
At least offensively.
Yeah, the plays are good to me. Like they're good plays. They run a lot of different stuff. It's a fun passing offense because it's they're real plays a lot of the time. It's like some real shit that they're running, and it's not just a RPO offense. Like they have the
Greg Roman bullshit, whatever.
And there's not much motion, which I think annoys Cowboys fans because they see like Shanahan doing all the motion, and they're like, well, that's what makes the more motion you have, the more. The better the coordinator you are is like, I think what a lot of people think, and Moore doesn't do much. It's kind of a static thing, but like when you're Dak Prescott, who's super smart, he's crazy smart, right? And this is something Rodgers has said. He wants less motion. Peyton Manning hated motion because he just wanted to line up and get the maximum amount of time possible to just look at shit before the play. And that's what you want Dak to do, right? You just want him to look at shit because Dak is really smart. I know he's thrown all these picks and people think he's dumb and an idiot, but they like Dak is a very much a ball knower test is what you think of Dak Prescott, I think. Like Draymond in the NBA maybe a little bit. It's like it's kind of one of those things where it's like if you think Dak is ass, like you don't know ball. But anyway, he's very smart, and that's why things are static. And I think they give Moore calls 3 plays is what I've heard is the structure of the thing. Like Moore calls 3 plays. Dak chooses the one he likes the most based on the coverage, and that's what they run. So it's like, and it's working. They score a shit ton of points. So like, I really don't like think that Kellen Moore is a bad, like the worst coordinator, the worst in the whole league. Really? Like
I can think of 2 in the AFC North that are worse.
Right, easily. Oh my God, all of them in the AFC North are probably worse. Like he's good. He's good. Yeah, I am not a Kellen Moore hater like a lot of people are until he and Scott Turner got fired today, who I didn't even think was bad in Washington. Like again, you're dealing with a literal XFL quarterback for most of his tenure there, got pretty good results. And then they're like, well, we got to do something. Like someone's got to get fired, and it can't be the quarterback because it's not free agency yet. So see you, Scott Turner. Like, bye. And it's like, what did you think he was going to do? Like, it was Taylor Heineke, bro. Right. Like, you have to do. I don't know, man. It's I think a lot of the coaching dialogue is a little bit broken. But anyway, we're running out of time here, so I'll stop.
Yeah, so that pretty much wraps things up. On Thursday's episode, we're going to, what were we going to do? Something. We were going to talk about
best case scenario, worst case scenario.
Yes, playoffs, wild card.
That old thing, the wild card.
Yeah, that whole thing that's coming up. We'll probably chit chat a little bit, but thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream. And as always, from Corn Boy, Bird Boy, and Lemon Boy, we will catch you all on the flippity flop.